All right, hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another FNAF stream. And hopefully you are hearing this in the background. I have background music playing. Hopefully it's not too loud or hopefully it's not too quiet. I hope not. And also, speaking of audio and everything, me testing everything out, me experimenting with background music. If you can't tell, I'm also doing a bunch of filters on my microphone because I talked about this in the past stream and everything of how I'm experimenting with stuff, new microphones, new filters, new effects and everything just to see what works, what doesn't. Really testing the boundaries similar to my facial hair and everything. And I'm like, you know what? Can I pull off facial hair? Can I pull off a beard? Let's experiment. That's what, honestly, what this year has all been about. It's just experimenting with stuff. We are experimenting with a bunch of different backgrounds, experimenting with the facial, with the beard and everything. And now experimenting with stream settings, microphones. So yeah, I'm experimenting with the audio effects and everything. Not once again, I referenced it, my reason, when I first did my first stream a couple of days ago with the audio effects and everything, that it's not like my audio sounded bad or anything. Like, no, I felt like it sounded good. It sounded natural. It sounded fine. I had no problems. I don't think anyone had any issue with it to my knowledge, but it's just one of those things where, it takes a minute or two to have these effects to potentially have better audio. So why not do it, right? Like it's a minute or two, takes literally no time. It's literally free. I don't want to say free promotion, but free upgrades. So why not do it? It's kind of the same thing of why I have a 99 free throw into every single bill on Tuki and everything, where it's literally free upgrades. So why not do it? But I'm still experimenting. I'm still testing everything because I don't know if it's just because I heard my voice one way just naturally throughout, the year and a half of me streaming everything with this microphone having no effects whatsoever. So maybe that is a part of it. But I remember the first stream I heard of trying out the audio effects and everything, I was not the biggest fan of it. I'm like, that sounds a little bit too edited. It sounds a little bit too forced. And once again, I do think part of it was due to just me so being used to how my voice sounded for a year and a half. It kind of just drowned out everything. So when I heard something completely different, completely new and everything, your first instinct is like, damn, I don't really like that. I like how it was before and everything. I am resistant to change. But I also feel like it was a little bit too edited. And the analogy I always come to when it comes to the audio filters and everything, I felt like it was too edited. It was too podcast voiceover-y. And what I mean by that is, podcasts are audio based. You're not looking at someone on a screen, whether it's a phone, TV, game console. I don't know how you watch streams. I don't know what to tell you what to do with your life, but you're not watching someone's face move as they're talking on a podcast. You're just listening to someone's audio, right? So very filtered audio, very, edited audio. Combine that with seeing someone on camera and everything, it just didn't look right. Because once again, podcast audio is just entirely edited. It's manipulated. People really boost the bass and treble and noise cancellation. It's very, very, very clearly filtered. And there's no problem with that because since it's just audio, you want to have the best audio possible. But when you also factor in seeing someone on camera as well, it just, I don't know, it doesn't look right. So I turned down some of the effects. I reduced some of the effectiveness on the effects a little bit. So hopefully it's a little bit better. It still sounds better, but it's a little bit more natural than the whole podcast voiceover where it's very clearly edited. So I'm still playing around with it, and hopefully it does get better. But worst case scenario, we go back to what we had before, which was just no audio effects whatsoever. We just have this natural microphone, and then whatever audio is coming out of my voice is what we get. And what we got right there was fine. But I would like to have some audio effects just to have some higher quality streams and everything. So I'm still experimenting. I'm still seeing what works, the limits, seeing what is possible. So yeah. So if you ever question why my audio sounds different and everything, or you question like, I don't really like this audio and everything, that is why. So I just wanted to have the explanation that we are testing some things with the microphone, testing some effects, and seeing what works, what doesn't, and trying to find the solid middle ground. Because hey, lo and behold, everyone's voice has slight pitches and slight variances, and everyone sounds a little bit different. So what works for someone's voice may not work for mine. So that's what this whole trial and error system has been. So once again, I'm trying some stuff out and I'm seeing what works, what doesn't. But without further ado, let us hop into this FNAF ER reaction of more Secret of the Mimic stuff. And apparently, whatever this new Secret of the Mimic lore is, answers an age-old question that's been out since FNAF 4. Which very, very much intrigues me because, as I've said numerous times before, FNAF 4, Rhyme accidentally, is the most confusing game in the entire series because what even is it? What is FNAF 4? Is it a nightmare sequence? Is it part of Dream Theory that is now retconned? Is it a hallucination gas chamber punishment for Michael Afton? Is it tied to sister location? Like, we don't know. Now there's sound illusion disc involved. Like, who knows what FNAF 4 is all about? So I'm curious, but apparently this new game has those answers.
Secret of the Mimic is set to come out in just over 2 months, and while we know it's going to be filled with lore of the very earliest parts of the timeline that we've been trying to figure out, I think not only will it solve those questions, but it might even solve a question that's 10 years in the making, surrounding one of the unsolved mysteries of FNAF 3. So Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. I get it, it's another theory on a game that isn't even out yet, but we do know a lot about Secret of the Mimic from the several pieces of advertising that they've released so far. I mean, obviously, the teaser we got during the FNAF anniversary showed us that it was going to be about the Mimic and that it took place somewhere in 1979, or at least was about an event that took place in 1979. Then at PAX West, we got a playable demo. Well, I say we, but I wasn't able to go, and I'm still totally not jealous about it, but some people got to play a demo that still hasn't been shared publicly, and in it they mentioned being in a factory and seeing so many new things, including posters that we do have pictures of from the PAX West booth, like these. Then we got the Help Wanted 2 update in December, which definitely told us it was going to lean very much so on the books. After all, there was the White Tiger plushie, and then this mansion in front of a factory that resembled where Edwin lived in the story The Mimic. A few months ago, we got that gameplay trailer from the Sony State of Play that showed us a lot about the game and doubled down on what we knew, that the lore was at least heavily taken from the books, if not one-to-one. We got names like Edwin Murray, and a Sony store page giving us a business name of Murray's Costume Manor, which also explains the MCM initial we got in the update. This trailer was filled with characters and costumes that we've never seen before, which makes sense as Edwin is a completely separate person who was just contracted by Fazbear, but most recently we got a Steam page that triples down on everything we know, all with a reiterated summary of the game and some screenshots that we've never seen before, the ones I'm showing off right now. All in all, we have a lot of information about this game going into it. Like, obviously there are twists and information we don't have about this game, but generally we know what we're in for. We're going to be one of the workers sent by Fazbear to reclaim whatever Edwin was working on for the company after he went MIA. And in doing that, we have to survive and collect the Mimic. So what is this game going to tell us about the FNAF timeline? Well, we know that according to Fazbear Entertainment, Edwin was contracted by them to make the Mimic. Now, this could be a lie because that's different than what we hear in the books, but we also know he was making several other animatronic costumes. In the book version of this game,
I've also related the whole thing about, FNAF, or let me rephrase. I've also relayed this whole idea that Fazbear Entertainment says, retrieve this Edwin Murray Mimic software that, we hired him for and everything. To me, I just read that as another state-of-the-art FNAF Five Nights at Freddy's cover-up. It's the very same thing of what happened with the Help Wanted VR game where they had a rogue indie game developer make games paid out by Fazbear Entertainment to lure us away from the truth as a cover-up.
he was actually hired specifically to make those costumes. The Mimic was just a side project he made to watch his kid. But we know in the game he still did make these costumes. And looking at some of the new screenshots from Steam, these costumes were not just meant to be worn by people. Sure, it does look like they could be, but looking at this screenshot, they were padded and fit to be able to be worn by animatronics as well. At least by animatronic endoskeletons. So the question remains, are these suits made for Fazbear, or are they just something Edwin himself was doing? In the books, he actually resents being hired to make these costumes because he doesn't want to make silly costumes. But so far in the game, his business is Murray's Costume Manor, so it does seem like this was at least a passion of his. Or maybe just something he's unfortunately good at. And other than exactly one animatronic in the trailer so far named Dolly, all of these costumes are that same felt and padding suit that feasibly could be worn by a human or an endoskeleton. Either completely, like the elephant and mushroom costumes seem to be, or partly, like Jackie, where the shirt and arms seem to be some sort of fabric, where the faceplate is metal. We're being sent by Fazbear to reclaim anything Edwin was working on, not just the Mimic. So that would include all of these costumes, which are very high quality. This leaves a major question to be answered. If all of these costumes were owned by Fazbear in 1979, why have we not heard about any of them until now? Like, sure, Fazbear
Let's tie up those loose ends.
had animatronic technology, but this would be animatronics, but better. This seems like a cheaper and much safer alternative than the metal exoskeletons that we've seen prior.
Which, if we're going on this whole timeline spiel, like, how is this possible? How can this thing exist way in the past, but then other events we know that happens later on in the future do not correlate? Like, for instance, my mind immediately goes to this location of how the Phone-Animatronics are very futuristic. There's sound illusion discs, voice mimics, audio lures, advanced endoskeletons with the purpose of capturing kids. Baby has like a claw machine, right? All this weird futuristic stuff is nowhere near like the FNAF 1, FNAF 2 era animatronics and everything. But we know this location, and from a time perspective, is earlier on in the timeline, which is very weird. Maybe this is one of those situations again, which honestly would not surprise me because, well, you know, FNAF, timelines, it being confusing, not adding up, details don't line up, well, it pays the bills, honestly.
Think about it, a metal exoskeleton is massive and heavy. Not only is it inherently more dangerous because metal is harder and sharper than fabric, but because it's so heavy, the endoskeleton underneath it needs to be stronger and more durable, which is not only expensive to make, but a stronger endoskeleton with a heavier exoskeleton means a higher risk for injury for anybody unfortunate enough that's nearby. Even the Bite of 83 couldn't have happened if it was a fabric suit. Even if there's a big fabric mouth on this animatronic, it couldn't clamp down. The fabric would just bend away. There would be padding. And
also, I'm pretty sure fabric like felt, like, you know, for instance, the glitch trap suit is very clearly hand sewn. Like, you can see the stitch marks on like that arm and the shoulder and the chest and everything. You can very see clearly that's like felt. It's fabric. It's meant to be like an actual like Halloween costume. And we know Fredbear and Spring Bonnie from FNAF 4, that minigame where it's the Bite of 83 or Bite of 87, we know they had to have been metal endoskeletons because they were Springlock suits. Because we know Springlock suits snap shut whenever moisture gets in the Springlocks. They cause them to snap down, which is why when the FNAF 4 crying child, who may or may not be Evan, Dave, who knows, but FNAF 4 Crying Child, when he shoved in the mouth of Fredbear, and he was trying to squirm out the mouth and everything, and his tears were going down the faceplates, they went into the Springlocks, and those tears, that water, got the Springlocks, they snapped shut, causing the FNAF 4 Crying Child to get bit.
I get it, Fazbear really has never cared about safety, but if the endoskeletons don't need to be as strong and durable, they can be made cheaper. So not only is it smarter and safer to be using fabric on these animatronics, it's cheaper too, which sounds right up Fazbear's alley. Which all begs the question, if Fazbear reclaimed a warehouse full of fabric costumes in 1979 that could have been worn by their own endoskeletons, why did they instead use harder to use and more dangerous and more expensive metal exoskeletons? In fact, this would be right around the times of springlock suits at Fredbear's. This seems like a way better solution than a springlock suit, a costume that can be worn by a human or an endoskeleton. So you can just put it on or put it on an endoskeleton, not some walking metal coffin that has metal pieces sprung to the sides so they can snap and crush a person inside at the slightest budge.
Yep. But we also know spring locks do double as something that an animatronic can be put in, but also a human can be put in. Because we know from the FNAF 3 audio tapes, whether the audio tapes in the first few games are canon or not is still up to determination. But we know directly from the FNAF 3 audio tape, Phone Dude talks about how both an animatronic endoskeleton and a human can get into an endoskeleton springlock suit.
Seems like a perfect evolution of a springlock suit that's safer and cheaper to make. So in a world where these exist and are owned by Fazbear, why would we ever have springlock suits or metal exoskeletons? Well, my best guess is Fall Fest. Every time we see Fall Fest mentioned in one of these games, something fire adjacent happens, except for maybe the lobby of Help Wanted 1. But in Help Wanted 2, both the carousel and the shooting gallery, games that take place during Fall Fest judging by the exterior design and the nearby landmarks, catch fire in their hard mode. The carousel even having that fire start at a barn that is structurally identical to the one in the Help Wanted 1 lobby. The Fall Fest poster itself has flames on it, obviously not like they planned to burn it, but it's at least foreshadowing, and the special delivery AR escape room that's themed very much like a carnival, like a Fall Fest, is filled with dry hay, wooden walls, and flammable barrels, as if the whole place could be set ablaze in an instant. So a lot of people have been speculating that there was some sort of
Yes and no. Right? Yes and no. Well, yes, but actually no. Because, yes, you are totally right that Fall Fest, especially the Help Wanted VR 2 game with the carousel and everything, they do catch fire. My counterpoint is, let's just keep it a buck, keep it 100. That's not the only time where fire has been a factor or has been brought up in this series. You go to FNAF 3 getting burned and Springtrap still surviving. FNAF 6, the whole point was to lure all the animatronics to burn it all down and effectively end the story and banish William Afton to HE double hockey sticks or toothpicks. Security Breach had a burn trap ending where the place got burned down with the blob, right? So there's a ton of times, a ton of endings where fire has been a factor. It's also never worked. So I would then, like, my counterpoint is fire is not mutually exclusive to Help Wanted VR 2, especially with Fall Fest and everything, because we've had other games in the series that have also used fire. Right? I just think of, in my head, whenever I see fire at this point in the series, I just think, oh, well, this is just a pretty stereotypical thing that FNAF just has in their endings. Pretty much every FNAF ending at this point feels like it has some fire ending. It's not special anymore.
Tragic fire at Fall Fest, and that's why it ended. But we're not sure the details of any of that, or why the fire happened in the first place. Well, what if part of the reason the fire started was these fabric costumes? Fabric that's flammable. Maybe Fazbear was using these fabric suits all the way back in 1979, maybe up until the last Fall Fest of 1983. But one stray endoskeleton in a fabric costume that is flammable around birthday candles that get lit, one wrong movement and that suit catches fire. And now we have an animatronic that might not be programmed on how to deal with being on fire, or even notice that it is. So this animatronic might be walking around lighting everything else on fire as well, causing a tragic scene and ruining Fall Fest and ruining the reputation of these animatronic suits. This might be the reason why not only Fall Fest as a concept was abandoned, but Fazbear never used the fabric suits moving forward, locking away the rest of them in some far-off basement. In fact, this idea even gets backed up in the books slightly, because during the actual story of the Mimic, it's never burned or damaged with fire, but the next time in the timeline we see an endoskeleton of the Mimic, it has a new head that's recently been replaced, attached to a heavily burnt body, almost like it was caught in a fire and sealed for safekeeping. But I hear you. That's a lot of speculation, and while it does make sense and follow logically, it relies on Fazbear using these fabric suits, which we technically have no evidence of. We have strong evidence that they collected them after collecting everything Edwin was working on, but we've never seen Fazbear use a fabric suit. The closest piece of evidence we have is Glitchtrap's persona, because it's a fabric version of Spring Bonnie, which, while that could be the case, it might just be the way the Mimic interprets animatronics, because that's what it was created around.
Well, two things. Number one, and once again, I've said this on previous streams, it depends on how you define Glitchtrap. Is he William Afton incarnated? Is there another persona? Is he an actual digital incarnation? He's actual virus from the circuit boards that Fazbear Entertainment scanned in to make their VR game, which we know the VR game is in universe. Like, what is Glitchtrap? Now, what I will say is there's one other time that fabric, like hand-sewn suits, have been part of the series. Now, I don't know if this is a stretch to say, because this is technically cut from the game, but in FNAF Ruin, I'm trying to think of what to search under. Okay, hold on. Let me pull this up then. Hold up. I promise you this will all be worth it. Okay. I'm telling you, I promise, that this will be worth it. I promise. You don't believe me? That's insane. I promise it will be worth it. Hold on, just one more thing. There we go. Okay. This is the other time where, like, hand-sewn costume suits have been brought in the series. Now, I know what you're thinking. If this is the first time you've ever seen this photo, which, by the way, is not fan art or anything, like, no, it's actually legitimate. You know, because you can see the C copyright. It says Scott Cawthon, aka the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's. So this is legitimate. So this is real. So, if you've never seen this photo or anything, you have no idea what this is. This is something that people found following the FNAF Ruin DLC, right? You can very clearly see it's Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and it's like very felt fabric costumes, very similar to Glitch Trap, right? With the sewing, the fabric. So take this as you will. Other people have went way more in depth on this than me, but I'm just throwing this can of worms out there. It's like, hey, Glitch Trap is not the only one that has had a hand-sewn fabric suit show up in this entire series, because this also exists. So take this as you will. I'm just a messenger. Do with this information as you will. I just want to throw this out there and show that, hey, this also exists. Anyway, thanks for coming to the TED Talk.
We have no solid evidence of Fazbear Entertainment using the fabric suits Edwin made. Or don't we? We do now have evidence that not only Fazbear used these fabric suits explaining all of this, but we have to go back to the first mainline FNAF game that features a fire, because this counterpoint might solve
First FNAF game to be released in our world, but not first game in a timeline to have fire. Because otherwise that would be, unless the Mimic has some fire in it, which would be crazy, but that would otherwise be FNAF 4 from a time perspective. So it's an important distinction.
the mystery I talked about in FNAF 3 in the title and intro of this video, a game that came out in 2015. Yes, FNAF 3 is 10 years old this year. I also feel old about that.
2014 was when FNAF started. Yeah, if you ever want to feel old, FNAF has been kicking around that long. We've been doing this whole FNAF thing for a decade. And speaking of FNAF 3, and if you really want to get granular and really talk about how old the series is, following FNAF 3 was the first time that people were talking about making a FNAF movie. A movie deal was signed and everything. Originally, Christopher Columbus, not that Christopher Columbus, the person who directed some of the Harry Potter movies, he was supposed to direct a FNAF movie with Warner Brothers. So, yeah, since FNAF 3, we've been in the talks of a FNAF movie coming out. A decade later, and we finally got it. So, that's why going into the FNAF movie, I was excited, because it literally has been a decade in the making. And I'm looking forward to the second movie that's coming out in this December. So we are 7 months away. Can't wait for that. Obviously, I will be reacting, giving all my thoughts on everything I can when it comes to the movie and everything, when it comes to trailers or news. But unfortunately, there just hasn't been any news that's come out of the FNAF movie. To my knowledge, if I'm not mistaken, I think they did wrap up filming in February. So now they are in the editing, cutting room and everything. And I said this on some stream, I can't remember, it's been so long, they all just jumbled together. Well, I think I said, if I had to guess when we would see a first trailer, first teaser for the FNAF 2 movie that comes out December 5th of this year, I think I said June or July would be the first teaser. And then you have another one that gets released on October, maybe around Halloween. You have the second teaser trailer, and then some interviews, some promotional material, and then you have the release on December 5th. And obviously, I will be watching the movie, and just like the FNAF 1 movie, I'll be giving my thoughts on the review as soon as I can. Now, I don't know if we'll be doing it on the same time as doing a Doki Doki Literature Club stream. That was just convenient. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about since I referenced it, little brief timeline. So when the FNAF 1 movie came out, I was planning on seeing it on opening day and everything, because once again, it has been a decade in the making and I want to see it for obvious reasons. And at the same time, that is also when I was doing the Doki Doki Literature Club streams. That's when I was first doing them. This was before getting the PC, doing the mod streams and everything. This was me doing the original playthrough and the side stories. Now, that's important because I was like, oh, I'm going to do the side stories as a stream. I'm going to finish that up, and then I'm going to see the FNAF movie, the FNAF premiere, that night, and then everything will be fine. Because Dan Salvato, the person who made Doki Doki Literature Club, said, oh, the original game's like 7 to 8 hours to play, which I think that's how long it took me to finish the original playthrough of Doki Doki Literature Club. And he said, like, the side stories is like a third of that. So I'm like, okay, that's like 2-3 hours. Do the side story stream, and then go see the movie. Great. So I'm doing the side story stream, as you do and everything. And we're getting closer and closer to, leaving for the FNAF movie. And I'm like, I am not even halfway done with this stream. So I literally had to pause the stream, end it, go to the FNAF movie, came right back here, sitting right on this couch and everything, and did part 2 of the side stories and everything. Like, I think it was raining that day. Like, I didn't even take off my coat or anything. I literally finished the FNAF movie, walked in my door, came right here, turned the camera on, and then finished the side story stream and everything. And I kind of did tease a little bit, like, oh, I just came out for the FNAF movie, but I'm going to have like a full-on in-depth review stream, just give my thoughts and everything, because, we were doing something that wasn't FNAF related, and I wanted something FNAF related to give my thoughts on, well, the FNAF movie. And plus, I also wanted to be mindful of like other people of, hey, I saw it on day one, everything, but hey, maybe people haven't seen the movie day one, everything. So I'm going to give it like a day or two, get my thoughts together, allow other people to see and everything. And then, okay, here's my stream, here's my review of the FNAF movie. But brief cliff notes of the movie before we get back into the first FNAF product that's coming out, especially sooner this year, is my thoughts on the movie. I liked it overall. It was worth a decade in the making. Is that nostalgia classes? Maybe. My one complaint is I wish there was violence. I wish there was gore. I wish we actually got to see the animatronics kill people because, well, that's their whole point, is being killer animatronics, and them not killing anyone was very disappointing. I wanted Blumhouse Productions to do something like they did with Megan, another movie that was made with a killer animatronic that, well, kills people. I want to see them do something like that. So hopefully they learn the lesson. They can see, okay, people are going to see this movie. This is going to be a big box office success. Now we can get experimental. We can have some violence. So I am hoping, knock on wood, that the FNAF 2 movie has some violence, because it was not relieving my itch. I want to see violence in my FNAF movie.
You don't want to talk about FNAF 3? Alright, it's fine. We have a replacement.
I was like, please tell me that's not a knock in real life, because that would be crazy.
FNAF 3 is a game that, at this point, its main...
Is it? That better not be a knock in real life, because no one's here. Alright.
Main plotline and lore is all but agreed upon. Most people see this game as Michael Afton, either pre or post being scooped by Sister Location, seeking out his father.
Pre or post? It would be... Let's see. Pre or post FNAF 3? Huh. That's an interesting question, now that I think about it. That is very interesting. What is this location? Is it pre or post? Because we know if you beat the custom night sis location, you beat the hardest mode, Golden Freddy mode, of the custom night sis location mode, you get a cutscene of Michael talking to his father, like, hey, it's me, Michael. I'm going to come find you and everything. I put her back together just like you said you would. And then we see the burned down Fazbear Fright, which obviously is location of FNAF 3, and we see William Afton in Springtrap, previously just laying against the wall and everything, and then bring his head up, showing that he's still alive and everything, because he always comes back. So, with all that being said, with that in mind of it already being burned and putting her back together just like you said you would, which we believe the her is his sister Elizabeth Afton and Baby, so then that would mean FNAF 3 is after Sister Location. Right, that's what that would mean, right? Because then otherwise, what does the her mean? I put it back together like you said you would. Who's the her? The her has to be Elizabeth.
And hearing about Fazbear's Fright, a horror attraction based on the Fazbear Entertainment franchise, hoping that he'll find either a lead on his father or his father will be similarly drawn to a place collecting all of the old memorabilia. So Michael Afton gets a job there, and soon enough, finds Springtrap, what remains of his father. And after a week goes by and he's sure that it is him, he lights the entire place ablaze to burn it to the ground, hoping to kill William Afton. But that's only half the game, because there's also the secret Happiest Day minigames throughout the nights, where when doing specific things, you can get access to a series of minigames that most people agree show the spirits of the victims of William Afton piecing together fragmented memories in the hopes to give one crying child peace. Not necessarily the crying child, even though I think it is, but at least this one spirit needs a team of souls working together to help them. And we don't know for certain that Happiest Day takes place at the same time of FNAF 3. I would argue it takes place closer to FNAF 6, but regardless, these are the two halves of FNAF 3 that most people agree upon.
I would make the argument it doesn't take place at the same time. Very similar to the first time we ever saw those 8-bit minigames, FNAF 2. One of the minigames we saw was Freddy was inside like some restaurant, some pizzeria by himself holding a cupcake and giving cake to people and everything. And you saw William Afton in his purple car drive by, pull up next to someone who was locked outside the pizzeria, kill them, and then drive off. We obviously know that the person who was locked outside the pizzeria was Charlie Charlotte Henry's daughter, and they go on and possess the puppet. But we know FNAF 2 and the puppet being created in FNAF 6, those two games are not next to each other at all.
But even still, there is at least one thing that there's never really been a good answer for, and that's the masks of Happiest Day.
The Mask of Happiest Day. I have a thought, but I'm not going to interrupt. I'm going to hear them out and everything. But I just have a thought that just, the cogs have turned in my head for a second.
Main 6 spirits get the main 6 Freddy's characters' masks, which makes sense. Chica, Bonnie, Foxy, Freddy, the puppet, and Golden Freddy. That all tracks, especially if this is the missing child incident victims helping the bite victim. That makes a lot of sense. But the issue arises on the approach to that birthday, where you pass by several other patrons at this Freddy's location. Patrons wearing unrecognizable masks, namely a green mask with a long mouth, a pig mask, a purple mask with a long mouth, a short-nosed blue mask, and this yellowish mask with green eyes. This never made any sense, and most people just chalked it up to Scott making random mask decisions just so we wouldn't get confused. Because if all of these characters had Freddy's masks, it would be harder to differentiate which spirits we've helped so far, whether or not these masks make sense in canon. I've also seen some people allude to the idea that these are the mediocre melodies.
I mean, they have to be the mediocre melodies because in the FNAF character encyclopedia, Scott literally calls it out saying, hey, these are the mediocre melodies. Like, they are in the Happiest Day minigame. Hold up, let me see if I can pull it up. But I remember people showing it, like Scott Cawthon literally said in the character encyclopedia that the mediocre melodies are inside the Happiest Day minigame in FNAF 3. Or is it the Freddy Files? Hold on. There's a ton of character encyclopedia books, so it's hard to remember which one is which. Nah, come on. This is annoying. I want to find it. Was it the Freddy Files? Hold on. This is annoying. I don't think this is the book. Referencing Happiest Day. Okay, this is this location. Come on, come on. Get to FNAF 6. Oh, come on. We're getting to the books. The original trilogy of books. That's annoying. God, there's some book. I remember it. I remember seeing it. I'm losing my mind. Come on. Where is it? Where is it? Like, literally, I'm not crazy. I remember seeing it. I remember seeing in one of the character encyclopedias. In one of like those character encyclopedia books, it talked about it literally called out that the FNAF Sits Miracle Melodies were literally in not Midnight Modus, in Happiest Day. Man, it's so annoying because I've been searching for minutes and I don't have anything to show, and that's annoying. Okay, that's the book. Okay, that's the page. But where is that from? Right. It's the ultimate guide. Okay. Okay, that's something. Okay, that's huge. That is huge. That is big. Okay, we found what we finally, at long last, we finally found what book they are from. I don't want to buy the book. Please tell me I don't have to do that. Right, I don't want to buy the book. Is the best thing we can do. All right, screw it. All right, hold on. I'm doing this because I can't. Because it seems like the only way I can pull up the page is if I buy it, but we're not doing that. So I guess for once in my life, I have to thank TikTok. Thank you, TikTok. Okay. So this is what I've been looking. Okay. This is what I've been looking for the longest time. Okay. So, at long last, this is not what I was planning for. I was planning just reading the page myself and everything, but unfortunately, I cannot find it anywhere. The only way I can find it is I buy the book myself. So this is what I've been trying to find is this. The Miracle Bellies are literally called out in FNAF 3.
Pig,
Yogurt,
okay.
Pig, green frog, purple hippo, orange elephant, blue. Okay, not all of them match. But here's the thing, I'm not the one pointing that detail out. This is actually coming from Scott Cawthon himself. In the Five Nights at Freddy's Ultimate Guide, the character description for each mediocre melody calls this out as something worth noting. Quote, it's unconfirmed, but a child in the FNAF 3 Happiest Day minigame appears to be wearing a Happy Frog mask, Orville mask, Mr. Hippo mask. Every single entry mentions this specific detail. Seems like an odd fan theory to call so much attention to.
Right? Right? Chat. So, literally, one of the FNAF character books it took forever to find, and it wasn't even worth it still. But yeah, the book literally directly says that, hey, indirectly, it may or may not, but it may be the characters you see, the extra characters you in the Happiest Day minigame, the frog, the pig patch, the purple hippo and everything, the Orville elephant. Yeah, those are the Meeker melodies. The fact the book from Scott directly calls it out, it to me is everything.
which while some of them line up, we have no answer for this short-nosed blue one, and this is supposed to be an elephant, apparently. So most of us just chalked it up to Scott just
I
throwing
can see
something
the
out
elephant,
there.
the snout.
But whether or not it was planned at first,
It's
which I
8-bit.
really don't think it was, I think these masks are going to become retroactively important. Note, not a retcon. They're not changing them. They are instead taking a piece that wasn't necessarily lore relevant and giving it significance. These masks might place this memory in a specific time period of the Fazbear franchise, the beginning of it, when other costumes were still used at the restaurants, not just the animatronics of the Freddy's gang, the felt costumes. This would likely be as early as 1983, the same year as the last known Fall Fest, and the same year that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened up, placing the Happiest Day memory in 1983. And if the Happiest Day memory is the crying child finding peace, then that would also double down on the Bite of 83 taking place in 83, since that's just an unofficial name. But I hear you. Sure, we have a bunch of new characters going into Secret of the Mimic, but how do we know if any of these masks are going to line up with them? Well, at least 4 of them have some pretty close matches in the promo material we've already received. Starting with the gameplay trailer we got in the Sony State of Play, one of the first shots gives us this yellow dog with a long snout and green eyes, which could be a match for this mask. Later on, we get this pig character lining up with the pig mask, and in the Steam screen, gives us this yellow dog with a long snout and green eyes, which could be a match for this mask.
Once again, you could also make the argument this is Orville Elephant, because orange, I want to say Orville like green eyes, and like this curved shape nose, this long nose. You could make the argument that's the trunk, right? So it could be an elephant. And plus, if you really want to get granular for a second, this little bottom part and everything, we know elephants grab like food and everything from the trunk and then put it in their mouth and everything. So that could be like the part open mouth, the bottom lip. So if you really want to get granular.
Later on, we get this pig character lining up with the pig mask, and
which is Pig Patch.
In the Steam screenshots we just received, we get to see a real look of the characters seen at this poster on PAX West, 2 of them being a crocodile and hippo, a green and purple animal with long mouths.
There's both a frog and a crocodile. It's weird now.
That could be these 2 masks. The only one we haven't received a pretty good match for visually so far is this blue short-nosed mask. But that's not where this theory ends, because in the epilogues, our characters sort through a lot of the costumes that are held in storage by Fazbear, felt costumes that were likely made by Edwin, and one of those costumes they come across is a blue dog, which could perfectly line up with this mask.
This is to me, that's pushing it. Oh, sorry, my camera's blocking it. Hold up. But that is a blue dog, apparently. I don't know about that. Saying this is a blue dog, apparently. But this
with a long snout and green eyes, which could be a match for this map.
That is a blue dog, but this, hold up, this saying is an elephant is apparently too much of a stretch. But that one being a blue dog, though, I don't know about that one. Right. I don't know about that one, especially because now that we know in one of the books, and Lily calls out the Maker Melodies show up in the Happiest Day minigame, it kind of makes you question this theory a little bit.
Later on, we get this pig character lining up with the pig mask, and in the Steam screenshots we just received, we get to see a real look of the characters seen at this poster on PAX West, 2 of them being a crocodile and hippo, a green and purple animal with long mouths.
But regardless whether it is these masks from Secret of the Mimic or Micro Melodies, either way, it does line up where the only one that is the odd one out is the blue character. Everyone else fits. Miracle Melodies, you have Happy Frog. Purple is Mr. Hippo. Orange one is Orville Elephant. Pig Patch. Right? All of them fit. The only one that doesn't fit is the blue one. Doesn't fit. And here, same deal.
That could be these two masks. The only one we haven't received a pretty good match for visually so far is this blue short-nosed mask. But that's not where this theory ends, because in the epilogues, our characters sort through a lot of the costumes that are held in storage by Fazbear, felt costumes that were likely made by Edwin, and one of those costumes they come across is a blue dog, which could perfectly line up with this mask. Here's one more point to drive it home.
Okay, I'm here for it because you have to. I need to be convinced. I'm not too convinced yet.
In this theory, all of these characters would have been made by Edwin at his factory. His factory that's attached to Murray's Costume Manor, a place where, according to these signs, seems to have a front-facing shop. One that sells gifts and masks. Masks likely of all of the characters Edwin has been making.
Yeah. Okay.
Masks that also would have been claimed by Fazbear if they went to reclaim everything Edwin had been working on.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But god damn it. What if Henry and Edwin are the same person? What if Henry and Edwin are the same person? Because it still lines up. Henry is still a genius inventor and makes animatronics paid off by Fazbear Entertainment. The Miracle Melodies we know were made by Henry. These masks would make sense because you have the green, the Happy Frog, the pink is Pig Patch, purple is Mr. Hippo, blue one, once again, that's the odd one out, and then orange is Orville Elephant. And once again, if Edwin and Henry are the stand-in, they're the same person, whatever Edwin creates would also be connected to Henry because they're the same person, right? Edwin has a factory and is connected to these animatronics, these mask creations. Well, then that would mean Henry is a genius inventor that makes animatronics and is tied to these masks, the Miracle Melodies. So, I mean, you could say Edwin, but it also makes a ton of sense if it's Henry.
And if Fazbear just became flush with a bunch of spare costumes and merchandise for those costumes, surely they'd throw it into Freddy Fazbear's just to make a quick buck, selling these masks to whoever children walk by. Masks that represent characters that, after the fire of Fall Fest, were disbanded and never used again. This could even explain the FNAF 3 phone call about having to use irrelevant suits while the spring locks were being put away. Those irrelevant suits might have been spare ones from Edwin's factory.
Miracle Melodies.
Ones that aren't in use anymore because they're too flammable. And if this did happen,
Or a Miracle Melodies because, once again, it's so weird because you get to this whole, this is what, to me, the whole conversation revolves around. Is Edwin and Henry, are they the same person or are they different? Because that can also be tied to Henry and the Miracle Melodies. Is animatronics that, because I remember what the tape is. It's, we have temporary suits for you to wear and everything, and questions about relevance should be ignored because they're found on short notice. Well, those animatronics would be the Miracle Melodies. And we believe that Henry made the Miracle Melodies to avoid copyright. But they were not popular enough as like Freddy, Fozzie, Bonnie, Chica. They were not as popular. So when Fazbear could not get access to Freddy, Fozzie, Bonnie, Chica, they then went to Henry's creation, the Miracle Melodies, because Henry's company that made the Miracle Melodies was bought out by William Afton and Fazbear. So the Miracle Melodies would still fit in line here if it's Henry.
in 1983, then all of this could have been happening at Fall Fest and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Or I'm just insane and I really need this game to come out so I have more stuff to talk about that isn't grasping at scraps. But that's all we do in FNAF.
It is indeed. All we do is just grasp at straws and we just find any details we can find. Hold up. Now that we are wrapping up this stream and everything, cool. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on it. It gets back to the age-old question it feels like we always have is Henry and Edwin, are they the same person or are they different? Because I can see the argument to be made for Edwin with the mask and everything. Like, I see the point. I see it. But at the same time, though, every single detail that works for Edwin also works for Henry, right? It also works for Henry because Henry was also a genius inventor that made animatronics, was a separate company that was then later acquired by William Afton and Fazbear Entertainment, so that lines up. Having technology made by Henry or Edwin be later acquired by Fazbear Entertainment, that lines up. We know Henry made the Meeker Melodies because that was the whole point of FNAF 6, was all the animatronics we saw in FNAF 6 and Pizzeria Simulator was made by Henry. That was the whole point. The whole thing was made by Henry to lure everyone into one place and burn all down to end the story. So that lines up. Meeker Melodies are also connected to Henry. And the colors of the Happiest Day, mask and everything would also be tied to Henry because not only does the book call it out that the Meeker Melodies may or may not have appeared in the FNAF 3 Happiest Day minigame, but talking about how Edwin has this animatronic costume shop and these masks and everything, well then why wouldn't Henry also have the same thing? And the masks, the blue, orange, green, right, also fit for Henry's creations of Meeker Melodies. The colors line up. So, I don't know about that, right? So, I think we just need an answer at the end of the day. Like, at the end of the day, we just need an answer to this question. And it's so frustrating to talk about. Is Henry and Edwin, are they different or are they the same person? Because it gets to the point now where if we're doing theories like this, everything that points to Edwin and this evidence also works for Henry. So to me, at this point, just say it. Are they the same person or are they different? And if they're different, then I question why every single thing, every single evidence point I've heard about Edwin since he was made in that Fazbear Frights book, why everything also works for Henry. If they are not meant to be the same person, why is everything similar then? So that's the answer I want more than anything. Is Edwin and Henry, are they the same person or are they different? If they're the same person, great. I feel like we don't need to mention Edwin or anything. We can just say Henry or Edwin. It can be interchangeable. And we know we're talking about the same person. Similar to Charlie Charlotte, where Henry's daughter is Charlie or Charlotte. But whenever someone says Charlie or Charlotte, we know who we're talking about. That's why whenever I say it sounds annoying, but I always say Charlie or Charlotte, both, because both names have been used interchangeably. So that's why. So are Henry and Edwin the same person? And if they're different, then I ask my question then, like, well then why are their backstories literally the exact same then? Because that doesn't work. So yeah. So that is my final closing point. Does this evidence point with the Meeker Melodies fit for Henry? Yes. But do these mask creations, felt costumes fit for Edwin? Also yes. But it gets to a point where they both fit, they both work, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, they may work, but you also can't ignore the other flip of the coin where it's like, well, it also works here. Very, very, very similarly nonetheless. So that's my closing point. Is it Henry or is it Edwin?